This is the How Did We Get Here podcast with your host, Nancy Jackson.
Hello, welcome back to How Did We Get Here, the podcast. Again, I'm Nancy Jackson, and I'm glad that you could join me again tonight. And I've got something on my mind again, and I want to bring it up to you and share it with you. It's something, do you know what modernism is? Have you ever heard of it? Do you know what it is? Um, I've heard of it and I am aware of it, but I can't really explain it. It's kind of ambiguous and elusive, at least to me it is. But it just keeps coming up in different, uh, um, I don't know, it just keeps coming up. That's all I can tell you. And so I decided that I'd better investigate it a little bit and try to get a better idea of what it is. So I'm going to just read to you what I looked up in a definition or two that I found. And modernism is the worldview ushered in by the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment took place, we're going back again to the French Revolution, but in the late 1700s. I think it kind of started in the 1700s. But the Enlightenment provided a new guardian of truth to replace religion with science. Modernism, therefore, proffered the idea that mankind, armed with rationalism and science, is able to access absolute truth and make unlimited progress toward a better life for itself. Modernism has had an influence in all areas of culture and politics, religion, and art. Literature, music, political, and economic shifts after the French Revolution in 1789 all bore the effects of the Enlightenment and the social tsunami of change and revolt against old traditions and hierarchical dominance. This is the backdrop for the beginnings of modernism. Be enlightened or else. And modernism in art is, again, kind of hard to describe, but and I'm going to lump them all together. Art, literature, music, all of them. They all have some kind of common qualities to them. One of them is defying convention. Another one is overturning traditional modes and tradition itself. Embracing societal change. That was a big one. And breaking with the past. It was like do away with the past and look to the future. And kind of a dim view of the past that should be eradicated and done away with. And again, this kind of reminds me of the French Revolution and what I learned about that when I went into depth last summer talking about the Paris Olympics and the opening ceremonies. But that's another story. I won't even get into that. But anyway, so that is in general what modernism is. Now, after I give this definition and this explanation, I myself have to admit that it still is kind of ambiguous to me. And it's kind of elusive, at least for my little pea brain. I can't quite comprehend it or get my head around it. And so I want to introduce to you another person that I've heard just recently who gave a talk at a forum back in September of 2024. And his name is George Farmer. I don't know if you know who he is or not. He is a Brit. He's from the UK. He's about 35 years old. He's a graduate of Oxford. His father's been in Parliament. He's worked in the financial markets for a few years, and he's also been very active in social media. He founded Parler, which was a social media um, platform, and so he's worn a lot of different hats, and he also was invited to speak at a forum again back in September that was sponsored by LifeSite News. I don't know if you know about them. It's an excellent podcast if you are interested in the subjects that they cover. The founder is a Canadian, John Henry Weston. He's been doing this for 40 years or more, and he does reporting and has a very vibrant podcast. And I would encourage you to tune into it. And if you want to, anyway, so what I'm going to offer you here and present is George Farmer, or a clip from a talk that George Farmer gave at the at a LifeSite News event called the Rome Forum um, um, back in September. And the subject of his talk is modernism. So I thought he's just perfect to give us another go at it and another explanation about what modernism is. So that's what I want to share with you now. So please tune in here and let's listen to George Farmer.
Mr. Farmer graduated with a first-class degree and scholarship from Oxford University, where he majored in theology. As an active Catholic, he works extensively in various church projects, both in his home diocese of Nashville, across the U.S. and Europe. He's married to Candace Owens, and they have 3 children.
Let's start with that topic of modernism. Like, what are we talking about here? Well, I think it's easy to say that if I said I went to pray before the body of an incorruptible nun to most people outside of this room, they would look at you as if you had 2 heads. They would probably say, don't invite that guy round for dinner. And the reason being is because they've all been born into the faith of liberal modernism. Liberal modernism is the new religion. It's the default new faith that we're all born into. In the same way that for centuries, if you were born in Europe, you could lay claim, just by virtue of your birth, to have been born into Christendom. If you are born into the West, you are now born into a de facto liberal modernist society. You're unquestioningly taught the premises of the modernist dogma, its practices, its rituals, its values. You inculcate its liturgical calendar without even knowing you are. You repeat its mantras. Your innate core value system is the modernist faith. And when those dogmatic principles are challenged, you almost instinctively, we all almost instinctively fight back against them because they clash with what we've been taught from a very young age. So what are those values? What are those core principles? Well, the first thing to say is that, like all religions, it has eternal truths. Apart from, of course, these are not eternal. They are just the spirit of the age. But what are those truths which sit at the heart of the modernist faith? The first one is that progress must come above all else. The past is gone. Progress above all else. The second is that what has been will always be worse than what is to come. The third is that the physical world and our rational universe contains immutable laws that cannot be transcended. And the fourth, and this is, again, none of these are really that new, but rehashed as modernism. The fourth is that the I is the greatest of all. Our neoliberal world order is built on the premise of individuality. It's built on the I. This list of core beliefs is absolutely crucial to the modernist faith. It's not exhaustive, but it is the encapsulation of what modernism is. Now, how many of us, when I read out some of those, probably felt, oh, okay, I can sort of get on board with some of these and maybe a bit of this and that. Progress, okay, progress sounds pretty good. We want to progress. We want to move forward as society. Immutable laws, well, gravity exists. Doesn't it exist? Okay, well, if it exists, then we have to agree that. As I just said, our entire neoliberal world order is built on I. Capitalism is built on I. And what has been, maybe there were some good things in the past, but, we've made some serious progress in moral and ethics in the last 100 years. There's all that kind of pull towards agreeing with some of these ideas. And we know these ideas because we breathe them, as I said. We've been taught them from the very youngest age. We don't challenge this narrative, because if we do challenge the narrative, we will be shunned, and we're afraid of that. And then we spend copious amounts of time reformulating the ideas of the church to fit with these ideas. And this is what our church has been doing. None of these ideas explicitly deny God, and that's actually one of the beauty of the modernist church. They try and fit their belief systems into our belief systems. The modernist faith would be too obviously from the other side if it said, you can have no other God but the I. It just says, I is great. I is the greatest value of all. It's the subtlety of the modernist dogma that makes it so powerful and has allowed for it to penetrate our church, infect it, and fundamentally make the church and God subject to its own laws and desires. It's corrupted the place of God, because what does God say? He says, you must have no other God but me. He doesn't say accept science. He says, you must have no other God but me, but accept science, or accept some immutable law of physics, which we're told is true. Accept rational self-interest or the idea of progress. He says, you must have no other God but me. And our Lord then says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. These two fundamental truths, the truth, the transcendental truth, means that everything else must be taken in light of those truths. Progress, science, our belief in rational self-interest. Everything must be subjected to these truths and not the other way around. We've all been so swift. It's so easy to adopt the principles of modernism and try and make our faith fit into them and not fully appreciate that actually in doing so, we're becoming a member of another religion. We are created by God. We are imago Dei, created in the image and likeness, witness to the Word made flesh, born of spirit and water. We partake in the holy sacrifice at the foot of the cross, having been confirmed and redeemed from original sin. We're made one flesh with our spouse to bring new life into the world so that all can give glory to God in the beatific vision. This is true yesterday. It's true in this room right now. And it will be true in 10,000 years. There is no updating of the faith. There is no new eternal truth. There is new revelation, prophecy, apparitions. But how do we know these revelations are true? Because they stand in the current of Scripture and tradition, the twin pillars of the church. So the modernist heresy has, like all heresies, sought to corrupt these truths, to make it malleable, changeable, to make it subject to its own immutable laws. Modernism would have us say that the faith of yesterday was, a faith. It was a good faith. It served its purpose. Christianity was cultural. It did its thing. But now, today, and tomorrow, we have to update it. We have to get with the times. We have to progress. We have to progress to a more progressive faith, a more humane faith, a faith more comfortable for our era.
And I think this would be a good time to remind you that I am a lifelong Catholic. I am a traditional, right down the middle type of a person. I've been faithful and I've been a lifelong learner. And I love my faith very much. And I love my church very much. We've been through hell in the last, well, I don't know how many years. It just keeps going on and on. If it isn't um, the scandals and we've been attacked from all sides, and it's a terrible, uh, it's a real crisis that our church has gone through, and it anybody that has been paying attention is that has the same worldview that I do is going to feel the same way I do, and we just suffer along with the church. And I continue to stay faithful. And I know that there's so much goodness. There's much more goodness than there is evil. And anyway, I don't want to get off on that, but I just wanted you to know that I'm speaking as a Catholic here. And I want to talk about modernism and what has happened in the Catholic Church with modernism. Um, if we go back about 60 years to the early 1960s, that is when the Second Vatican Council took place. And the year it ran from 1962 to 1965. And there were enormous changes that followed after Vatican II. And there were adversarial entities. There was a great amount of division at the beginning of Vatican Council, and there was a group of theologians and educators, and there was just an element in the church that was prepared to make big changes. And many things were introduced. There were many controversies, and it was a very, very explosive event. And I'm going to just leave it at that. And we'll save that one for another podcast, because that one will take quite a while to talk about everything that went on in Vatican II. But it's very, very significant because the aftermath after Vatican II is still affecting the church today. And modernists are those who wanted to make radical changes in the church and impose them on the church for whatever reason. That I'm not even going to go into that one either. But it was a time of great turmoil and disastrous in many ways. There were some good things that came out of it, but there were also many catastrophes and many bad things that came out of it. And there were people that wanted radical transformation of the church, and they wanted to reinterpret traditions in Catholic teaching in the light of the 19th century philosophy and historical and psychological theories. And they wanted freedom, all kinds of freedom and freedom of conscience. But what they meant by freedom of conscience was not clear, and it just really stirred up a lot of trouble. That's all I can say. So anyway, modernism is still a part of our church now. And I do believe that the modernists are really trying to attract people from other faiths to come into the Catholic Church. And I think that they were trying to eliminate those elements that they thought were offensive or were turning people off and turning people away from the church 60 years ago. And but it kind of backfired. Well, it really backfired, and we've had immense losses in the church ever since then, and the church has been in decline terribly. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. I just wanted you to know that I am a Catholic and that this really is important to me, and that's why I'm bringing religion into it. And I wanted to talk to you again about, here we go back to France again. And I don't know if anybody watched or tuned in to, or if you're aware of the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The cathedral caught fire. It was back, I think, in April of 2019. And it just went up in flames. And the church was not completely destroyed, but it was profoundly, and well, it was just a total disaster. And I've got some pictures that I'm going to put up so that you can see some of the pictures of what it was like before the fire and during the fire, and then what they have been able to put back together and restore in 5 years or whatever it was from 2019 up till now, to be able to reopen the church and have it go back into full use again. And when I watched it, the modernists were there, and I just had to. I didn't want to laugh, but I mean, it was very obvious that there was a clash of culture within the building. And I have to say that the the reconstruction was spearheaded by the state. The church itself could never have afforded the millions and millions of dollars that it took to restore and reconstruct all of the destruction that had taken place from the fire. So the state had a voice in how things were going to go. And when they had their opening, the state insisted on certain things, elements that would be part of the ceremony and some of the furnishings and things like that in the church. So I want to point out some of these things to you. And what I was struck with by the most was the the vestments that the priests wore. First of all, there were, I don't know how many priests on the altar for the opening mass, and the vestments, they all wore matching vestments, and you could make your own comments on the vestments, but they kind of reminded me of either Microsoft Windows or a Rubik's Cube, or maybe maybe Google. I don't know. They were bold primary colors. And well, you can see for yourself when I put the pictures up. And the altar was very, very modern. It it was a complete change from the Gothic style and the Gothic architecture of the original church. And those were two things that I noticed on my own. And although there were some other beautiful things, it was a beautiful choir that sang, and that was lovely. And everybody was very reverent and appreciative of the moment. And it was a wonderful day and a wonderful night for France and for Paris. And I think that it kind of goes to show how much um, France appreciates what they almost lost and they were very grateful for the restoration. But I had to bring up the modernist influence that was there because to me it was just very obvious. But it's just one more place that we have modernism kind of right in our face. So anyway, I hope that you appreciate or get something out of this podcast. And I would really welcome any comments that you would have, either on the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, or the idea of modernism, or if you've had any experiences with modernism, or if you have noticed it at all. It's kind of tricky, and it's hard to even recognize. But I think George Farmer has done a good job of describing what it's really about. And I would invite you to, if you want to hear more from him, you can hear the full talk that he gave at that Rome Life Forum. Just go to LSN TV. It's a podcast, and look for the Rome Life Forum and look for George Farmer, and you'll find him that way. But that's all I have for today. I don't want to make this too long, but I do appreciate your tuning in again, and I hope that it makes some sense to you, and that I'm not just crazy myself. Sometimes when I bring these subjects up, I worry that people think I'm crazy. I might be a little crazy, but what can I say? It's just the way I am. And these are things that are really important to me. And hopefully they're important to you too. So if you like the show, hit the like button. You can share it with your friends, pass the word on. That's the best way to spread the word on this podcast and any other good ones that you like to watch or listen to. And again, I hope that you will come back, and we'll get together soon. And in the meantime, take care of yourself, and God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to the How Did We Get Here podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this episode with your friends and family. For more information and to connect with Nancy, email howdidwegethere1884@gmail.com.